What happens in the sky affects life down here on Earth. The celestial compass shows you how and guides your way with astrology you can use from professional astrologer Kathy Beal. Every episode features her light-hearted, practical forecasts and navigational tips, blended with humor, optimism, and a love of patterns, symbolism, and pop culture references. Kathy translates technicalities into concepts that apply to real life. You'll learn how the current moment ties to where we've been, from the recent past to cycles that last happened years ago, and get a look at where we're heading. And much more, from special topics to special guests. The Celestial Compass, enlightening, entertaining, and empowering. Here's your host, Kathy Beal.
Greetings, Earthlings. This is Kathy Beal of EmpowermentUnlimited.net, and welcome to another episode of Celestial Compass. We're going to be talking largely today on the Pisces full moon about practices of working with the moon and practices that you can use for self-care. But first, I'm going to update the forecast just a bit. The full forecast is at omtimes.com and also at my site, empowermentunlimited.net. This week, we have the equinox on the 22nd, which starts fall in the northern hemisphere, spring in the southern hemisphere, and this week the energy that's going on will kind of play like a background program for the next 3 months at least, and it's incredibly dynamic. And those of you who've listened to or followed me for a while know that dynamic is a code word with me. So the big thing that will be coloring this season for us is a really harsh, demanding, and ultimately clarifying aspect between Mercury and Pluto. Mercury rules communication, our information stream, our thoughts, papers even, and it's in a clashing demand for action with the ruler of hidden things, secrets, big power, stuff that we generally prefer not to talk about in polite company, not to bring to light. Mercury and Pluto are having this aspect right at the equinox. It's called a square, and there will be 2 more because next week Mercury goes retrograde for its final retrograde of the year. I'll get back to that in a second, but this square promises to bring a lot of revelations, a lot of long simmering things that people have been trying to keep under wraps that will be pulled to the surface this week, the beginning of October, and again the beginning of November, because this aspect will happen 3 times. And this will also cause you to have lots of hard talks with yourself, to get very candid with yourself about all kinds of things, and ultimately translate that candor into a lot of clarifying conversations with other people. It's not all chaos this week. Right now, we're in the lovely, luscious vibes of a Pisces full moon, which is kind of floaty. So enjoy it today, because you'll get real clear on the things that need to be cut out, particularly in your thinking, in the next 2 days. There's a stabilizing influence by the weekend of putting some kind of containment or structure on ideas that you have, things that you want to push forward, and most importantly, the Mercury retrograde. Now, I do have a guide to Mercury retrograde at omtimes.com, and this particular one takes place in Libra, which is an intellectual sign. It's a sign that is very connected with words. And those of you who know much about a Mercury retrograde know that Mercury retrograde has a big impact on conversations, on words, on agreements, on understanding things. There will be going back over a lot of things that you thought you had arranged a certain way. You'll have the opportunity for do-overs. It is a terrific time for research, for filing, for reorganizing, for finishing old things, for revisiting previous agreements. There's a possibility for lots of confusion, for the new stuff, for people having conversations where they're using the same words, but they attach different meanings to them. So being extra special, clear, I like to say, have an attention to detail that is so great that you almost are acting like you're stupid in clarifying things with people. That is, the appearance you're giving is much less important than getting clear and straight on what is going on. Mercury is retrograde from the 27th until October 18, so it will be a big factor for the beginning of next month as well. And it brings with it this influence that I mentioned of secrets coming out, revelations getting really clear, and also ultimately stripping down and streamlining your thinking. So you may find as you go through this that there are certain topics that you're simply done with, certain conversations that you just will not allow back into your life, and just certain places that your mind has traveled that aren't where you want to be anymore. And so we'll go more into that when we get to October coming up. But now let's talk about the moon. And we're going to talk specifically about some ways of working with each phase of the moon, not just the new and the full moon, which most of us are familiar with, but with all 8 phases. And to help us do that, I have with us today Xan Palay, who is creative director of Lunarly, people whose job has them working with the moon. And Lunarly creates boxes for the moons of each month. And it's also releasing later this fall a guide to creating a self-care practice tied to nature and the moon phases called Living Lunarly. Now, a little bit more about Lunarly. From the start, Lunarly's goal was to draw together a community under the moon above. They knew there were other people out there who cared about setting intentions, connecting with nature, and finding meaningful ways to restore their spirit. Today, their community is thousands strong, and while it takes many forms, Lunarly remains a place to explore, learn, and share in a journey together. Everything Lunarly makes has an intention behind it. They began with monthly self-care boxes themed to the new moon and filled them with carefully selected plants, candles, crystals, and the like. As they've grown and expanded their offerings, their enthusiasm has grown too. The resounding response from people around the globe bolsters Lunarly's commitment to make all they do significant and useful. So, welcome, Xan.
Hey, Kathy. Thank you for inviting me. Excited to be here.
Yeah. So, can you tell me from your perspective, tell me about Lunarly?
Lunarly is an interesting project that a bunch of us got together to launch to help people experience the rhythms of nature in a structured way. We, as you said, we know about the new moon and we're like, okay, get that. Full moon gets a lot of attention, and rightly so. But there's the entire cycle, and each lunation has its own opportunities every day through it to not only kind of set goals, but also to figure out how the way you're feeling and what motivates you and what holds you back or springs you ahead, how that might be reflecting the cycle of the moon. I think all animals are definitely influenced by those cycles, and it's a way of bringing some attention to that so that instead of just kind of flopping around feeling confused, we can use that structure to help organize our feelings a little bit and be more meaningful.
And Lunarly looks at, if someone were to go to your site, they would see that the the name for the moon of each month is associated with the, what's a good word for it? Maybe native, traditional name for the full moon for that. So, for example, this month is harvest moon, right? Okay.
Yeah, and that's an interesting thing because different cultures identify different moons different ways, and it's an endless kind of resource to look at how everyone does it. But since our business and our community is largely in North America, we've leaned into the native indigenous traditions, partially because they are so closely tied to the land as well as the cycles. There's that connection there, but also because many of them are in the vernacular. Some are less well known, like I always think of the sturgeon moon is one that I hadn't really been aware of, but the harvest moon and the corn moon and the cold moon, people like the strawberry moon sounds like something we can all relate to in June. So that's why we picked common names that come from those traditions, because we thought they would feel the most familiar.
And how did the collective come up with its way of gathering different physical objects to work with ritualistically?
Yeah, that's a really I think an interesting question. There's the heart of the self-care box, and that is every month one receives, you would receive, or will receive, hopefully, if you sign up with us, a house plant or a candle. And those are the anchors of the collection for some really specific reasons. The first one is the houseplant. It brings nature into the home and helps you connect. And I think that one of the things about the moon is that it's you have to go outside to enjoy it unless it's coming through your window. And that's wonderful. However, bringing nature and awareness of nature into your home to live around you kind of gives off a lot of energy, just like your pets might or the people who you live with. And I think that you might agree that in the since like all of the changes that occurred in 2020, houseplants and nature have become even more important to people. So we're finding that that's been really powerful to people to watch those rhythms of how plants grow, how some of them respond to the rhythms of the day. That's really inspiring to people. So that's one part. And then with the candles, I don't know about you, Kathy, but there's some candles that are really, really delightful and some that are pretty rough, right? And so we try really hard to come up with different scents that help kind of open the door to that idea of self-care and taking time to slow down and observe by choosing combinations and scents that are going to be pleasant to most people. You know, you can't make it's not going to be for everybody every time, but we try really hard to find things that aren't harsh, that aren't chemically, that will bring a calm to the room so that it can set a tone of this is a special place or a sacred space. Along with those items, there is, as you said, a beautiful card that people collect particularly people who like to have an entire array of things that go together. People collect the cards, and they have some facts about the moon and some ritual setting suggestions on them. And then also every month, a particular kind of stone comes in the collection. Many of those are ones that you can charge with energy from the moon or through meditation. And then then we also have a self-care item, and the team gets together and talks about what they think is going to be useful. And it's been everything from, say, sound bath tools like a beautiful singing bowl or jade. The jade, I actually am forgetting the name of it, but the kind of stone that you use to smooth your skin. I'll tell you, I really love that one. And other things to set up, like almost a little moment for yourself that's not about indulgence so much, but more about rejuvenation and letting yourself recharge and dig deep so that you have more to give to yourself and others and the world. And that's how we think about each box, is what's going to work together, and that works with that particular moon cycle, so that people have things to do and to enjoy.
And you target it to, well, the idea is to start with the new moon of the cycle.
Correct.
And do things throughout it. All right. Now, I noticed that in the guide, I've seen an advanced copy, although it's not available yet. You do talk about 8 phases, which is more than most people even. I mean, they might know about 4 phases: the new moon, the first quarter, third quarter, full, that sort of thing. Was Is this something that you actually guide people toward paying attention to, that much detail every couple of weeks?
Yes. Well, certainly in the book we go deeper. In the box, it gives you the outline of the new moon, how to set intentions that reflect the theme of that moon if you want to do it that way, and then the full moon. In the book, it does go. We have exercises that will take you through the whole journey, so that you can start with the new moon. And that is, it's interesting. You probably, know this better than I, that when there are new beginnings, it can be either exciting or a little bit scary. And it's interesting with the new moon because it is such a blank slate. And so we talk about this as being the best time to set clear, achievable, and specific intentions for yourself at that time. And there's we talk about the intention, and affirmation. Yeah.
Hold that thought. It's time for a break. We'll start up with this right when we come back. Thank you so much. Want help with your own celestial compass? Visit my site, empowermentunlimited.net, for Astro Insight forecasts for each week, month, and new and full moon. Want to explore the personal impact? Make a decision? Understand another person? It is possible. Click the Services tab to book a personal session with me. That address again, empowermentunlimited.net. Welcome back to Celestial Compass. We're talking with Xan Palay about Lunarly and rituals of working with the moon. And we were talking about the Beaver moon, which is in November. And I see in the Living Lunarly guide that the explanation for that is that Native Americans and early European settlers trapped beavers in November before the waters froze, and that the beavers and the reavers retreated to their dams. So it's a time to prepare your own dam, to make your home a sanctuary, and to keep you warm through the cold that is coming. So we were talking about, right before the break, setting intentions for this particular moon.
Yeah, and that is precisely right, and it is an interesting thing because November is in that weird in-between space in the cycle, in basically in our year and our in the way most of us live, where we're kind of before getting into deep winter, and it is a great time to organize and find things that make you comfortable in your environment, where you can relax, reset, and recharge. And in the new moon ritual that we suggest, intention setting on focusing on the themes of the Beaver moon, like sanctuary, home, and comfort, align with this lunar cycle. So, for example, like I was saying, the first thing that we do is set the space. So you can maybe rearrange your space a little bit, and that can be your whole house. That can be just the place where you have a cozy nook the place where you find that you like to sit back and relax. It doesn't have to be anything big. It can be as big or small as you need. But you want to invoke beauty, light, and a variety of things that create a warm, snuggly, safe ambiance for yourself. And we suggest that perhaps you wrap yourself in a cozy blanket, play some soothing music, and if you have black tourmaline, which we send out in boxes often, then you place it somewhere visible and where it's going to be decorative, but also keep reminding you that it is it's a place to help you kind of summon that image of peace, safety, and almost building your cocoon.
I see slippers and fluffy pillows are on the list for this month. That's not a bad idea.
Yeah, totally.
You Lunarly has come up with a guide that is being published later this year. I understand the publication date has changed. Do you happen to know when it is?
We think November. We were expecting it a little bit earlier, but as you know, everything in the world you have to kind of take a lighter grip with because nothing is exactly on time.
That is right, and particularly if you're having books printed overseas. It's anyway. All right, so the guide is called Living Lunarly. Can you tell me a little bit about the author?
Yes, so her name is Kiki, and she was somebody who we collaborated with our wonderful partners at Quattro Books. And they helped us find her because she not only knows her stuff, but also writes in a really accessible way. This book is one where you can jump around anywhere you want. And you can start if I gave it to you right before the cold moon, you could start at the cold moon. There's a really rock solid introduction explaining much of what you and I have just been going through about the why and how of all of this. But it also remains pretty in depth. Like how sometimes people give you a cookbook that it is more like long stories and then a couple recipes, or there are other ones where it's all recipes and no context. This is a really good balance of context for the moon and then practical, doable with things that you have around your home, prompts and, quote unquote recipes for how to set your intentions for any given month.
And I'm looking at this, and there's a nice outline for a new moon ritual for each month, which includes nourishing your body and has a closing ceremony. And then there are actual things to do with each phase. Maybe a planting project. I see at the waxing crescent. First quarter under the beaver moon, a sanctuary maintenance list, a little mandala coloring exercise for the waxing gibbous. And then a full-blown full moon ritual. And yes, I will give people a spoiler. The graphics are utterly gorgeous in this book. So that one has that. And then some things to do with the other two moons that are coming. Third quarter. Well, actually, there are more than two. And down to exercises for closing out the cycle. So it looks like it's full service. So how might a reader use this book any way they feel like, right?
Yeah, it's a funny thing. And we also I don't want to say throw because it's not a throwaway thing. Something that I really appreciate is that there's also a little inset and deep dive about how to use different crystals. And so it is not the end-all, be-all encyclopedia about adding crystals to your practice. But it is a good way to get introduced to them and to how to use that to be a reminder through the month of what those intentions you're setting are. Because you can close a journal and be on your way, right? But if you have incorporated a crystal into your practice and you have it out where you can see it, it's a little reminder, almost like putting a string on your finger to say, oh, this is where I want to be this month, and oh, I'm going to go back to that journal entry and look at it again. And it's almost like an accountability partner. And personally, I think that some of these are an easy way to, if you're having some friends together, be it virtually over Zoom, or if you want to have an equinox gathering party. For me, it would be a party. For someone else, it might be some other kind of practice. But I think it's a nice way to add a little structure with friends. It doesn't all have to be by yourself. And even though these have themes, you can adjust them. If there's an exercise in a different month than the one that you're on, with a little bit of adjustment, as long as it's kind of in the same vein of the basic theme of the moon, you can rewrite them and share them with others and make them fit where you are in your life.
I'm just noticing there's a hot chocolate chakra clearing exercise. That would
there's
appeal
something
to
for
some.
everyone.
Right, absolutely. And I see that you have a ritual for the harvest moon. Interesting. It's the full moon that falls closest to the autumnal equinox. So that would be today, since today is the Pisces full moon and the equinox is in 2 days. That would be appropriate for people. There's a playfulness in all of this, and an easy, you don't have to be deadly serious, and here are some things you can do that bring, as you were saying, incorporate objects that are actually naturally in your home into a lot of this. Does the people behind Lunarly, do you ever do any of these together? There's a question for you. Do you guys ever do rituals together? Have I just lost you? I think I have. Okay, well, so the book is called, as I'm scrolling up, I'm hoping she'll come back, Living Lunarly by Kiki Ely. It will be out in probably in November, but if you go to lunarly.com, you can find information about it. Also on Facebook, look for Lunarly. I understand they're on Instagram as well. And you will find all kinds of ideas about working with moon cycles in a really organic and kind of ongoing and constant way. The book is published by Quarto, which is behind a lot of the guests that you've been lucky enough to hear with me in recent weeks. And it's a very easy to deal with. It's the sort of thing, it looks like, that if you know a lot about astrology, you could get a lot out of this. And if you are a relative newcomer to it and you want to just punch up what you do, you'll get a lot of information from it. So have a look for that. And again, the approach of all this does seem to be self-care. Now, many people will look at a new moon ritual as, oh, I'm going to set these intentions for things to come into my life and make so much happen. You don't have to be so outer directed always. Like, I'm going to have I'm going to have this in my life. I'm going to make this amount of money, whatever. You can focus instead on, so sorry. I'm getting distracted with messages from people about this. You can make you're working with the moon a much more personal, restorative, and regenerative ritual and approach, rather than simply saying to the world, I want to manifest this, which is what a lot of people do with new moon rituals. So I'd be curious if anyone does try techniques like this. There are various places you can find me, especially on Facebook at Empowerment Unlimited, and I would be very curious to hear what your results are with it all. So again, this month, We have the full moon today, the full moon in Pisces, which has to do with the interconnectedness of all life, with our fantasies, with our dreams, with our ability to escape. This is a really appropriate moment to kind of just float in time and see what comes up. And know that there are cutting tools nearby at your disposal that you can use to excise all kinds of things, and that information is going to start coming up and coming up and coming up as Mercury heads towards its retrograde. At the same time, Venus is in Scorpio, which is a really deep and intense sign. She was there a year ago. She was there 2 years ago. That's her normal cycle, but I mean at this time of year. So this may be a time for you to explore all kinds of things about past relationships. A Mercury retrograde always brings ghosts from the past, things that you valued in the past, things that were important to you in the past, and rediscover what has meaning, what really feeds you, and embrace that. And let go of things that don't. The links to Pluto are very good for that. The Pisces full moon is in an opportunity aspect to Pluto that precedes Mercury squaring Pluto. So this is a moment to float and then decide what stays with you. Well, folks, it looks like we had some technical difficulties. I guess I invoked Mercury retrograde and Mercury squaring Pluto one too many times. So just as reminders, the Living Lunarly guide is coming out later this fall. I do believe it's in November. You can find Lunarly at lunarly.com, and my forecasts are at my site, empowermentunlimited.net, and also at omtimes.com, where you can find my Mercury retrograde guide. Talk to you in 2 weeks.